There you go. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you for coming out. As they said, I worked in China for 6 years full time, from 1999, 2004, and 2007, 2008. And I've really been burdened with what's going on there with the coronavirus and all of that. So I've been trying to share with people what we experienced when we were there back in 2002, 2003 with the SARS virus, and then with the epicenter and the earthquake and all of that. So let me see if this is going to work or not for you guys. The first slide up there actually is getting ready to jump up is, who am I, why am I here, where am I going? And that's something I actually try to start all my lectures with. As I mentioned, I'm a family practice doctor. I think I mentioned that. A family practice doctor now working at the VA down in Waco. But I've worked for many years all over the world, been to about 35 countries in various capacities. I am an Aggie. Where's my Aggie friend? Giggle. Oh wow, more Aggies here than I thought there would be. Then I abandoned my Aggie roots. I went to University of Texas for medical school, so I'm also orange. Then I went to University of Oklahoma for residency training, so I kind of made the rounds of all the rivals. But I actually became a Christian when I was at Texas A&M after studying basically all the world's religions and trying to figure out if I believed in anything. I became convinced of the reality of the gospel, and it's actually to a severely handicapped girl that couldn't even talk. She just communicated pointing with her nose at a piece of paper with the alphabet on it. But Tracy and God together just convicted me that I needed to make a full-out commitment to Jesus. And ever since then, I just realized God uses all these different things, handicapped people and all sorts of people, to bring glory to Him and bring people to salvation. So it was many years ago when I was at Texas A&M back in 1980 to 83 or so a little bit longer than some of you have been alive. Why am I here? I'm here again because I want to try to share with you what God's done in the past and what God's doing in the present in China, and try to challenge you as well as all of us to really walk out what He wants to do in our life, no matter what we go through. Where am I going? I'm going to go back to Waco tonight, and I'm going to be hopefully back overseas soon. We're praying about going either back to China or back to the Middle East. I think there was an email that came out that said I was a retired missionary. I don't think missionaries ever really retire. We just kind of go back and forth in different. I don't think any of us, should retire. We should all be trying to do as much as we can. And the final question that I put there is, can I get there for myself, or do I need a guide? And I think all of us need guides at some level or another in our life. We can't make life on our own. I think I may be speaking too fast for you, by the way. I will slow down a little bit. I'm from Texas originally, but I've been accused of speaking rather fast. I was actually telling him, I spoke in Russia one time, and I was talking about my English is not very good, and the hardest job is translating my poor English. And literally while I'm speaking, I was standing here, and the translator was right here, and all of a sudden I hear, wham! I look back, and the guy has passed out. So if he stays standing back there, we know we're doing an okay job for him. You guys all know where China is and all these other places, but this is just kind of giving you an idea of where I've had the privilege of going in different capacities. The reds are where we lived, and the yellows are where we visited. I just want to start off with this one verse. John 10:10 says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the fullest." And that's what I've seen repeatedly all over the world. The devil's wreaking havoc with SARS virus or the earthquake or personal things in our own life. Actually, the biggest disaster in my life happened when I was 8 years old. When my family, my mom and dad divorced, and left 4 of his kids on my side of the family and 6 kids on the other side of the family. Shattered lives. To 10 kids' life was shattered when my parents divorced, and my dad married his secretary, which he now greatly regrets. But and I've dealt with divorce through the years, and that's one of the greatest tragedies, one of the biggest disasters we have all over the world, is the breakup of families and the destruction that brings. But Jesus said, "I've come that they may have life to the fullest." When I became a Christian at Texas A&M, I thought, man, this is really going to be boring. I'm going to have to follow the Bible. I don't like that stuff. I want to do my own thing and be able to be free to do my own thing. And I'm going to have a lot more fun if I do my own thing, but I can guarantee you that is a lie. The best fun you have, the most joy that my life is always when I'm following all out with Jesus' plan, not my own plan. When I try to do my own thing, I bring a lot of destruction and heartache and pain, which is what I see with my patients a lot. I also wanted to share with you these verses about, apart from me, you can do nothing. a lot of times people say, oh, you're a medical doctor, you're a medical missionary, you can do so much. I wish I was a doctor or a nurse and I could go do stuff. But God uses the simplest of things in the mission field and all over the world. And actually, in my experience, medical missions is not near as effective as you would think it might be. Because as doctors, we learn to depend on our brain and our talent, our skills with our hands, whatever we've been trained in, instead of the Holy Spirit and God's wisdom. And so a lot of doctors, unfortunately, don't accomplish as much. And if you read very many missionary biographies, you can read about people that are really impacting people all over the world. Most of them had many difficulties in life, weren't that talented in different ways, didn't have a high education, but they just learned to depend totally on the Spirit of God, and the Holy Spirit led them into incredible, fruitful harvest. And this is what this next verse says: I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. And then it goes on to say, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And so if we abide in Jesus and we abide deeply in the Word of God and come to know Him deeply and personally and walk with Him, we can bear much fruit wherever we go, whatever the devil throws at us. I had no idea when we moved to China in 1999 that we'd be involved in the SARS virus, we'd be involved in earthquake stuff, we'd be involved in the HIV crisis and these different things, but it was all just walking out with God and trusting Him to give us the ability to address whatever things that God opened the doors for us to talk about. So I just want to encourage you to focus on this, and then to realize again that in this world you will have trouble. A lot of times when I was in China, I dealt with other missionaries, and they would come into my office and they would be all upset because they're having all these challenges and difficulties. By the way, I felt like I was back in China a little bit today. We're driving into Austin. We don't have traffic in Waco where I live now. Still got it, but at least you can still see the sunset. That's why I always tell people my least favorite parts about China was the traffic and the pollution. And one time when I was talking to a friend having dinner, his 12-year-old girl runs in, Daddy, there's something strange going on outside. And we run out to see what it is, and it was a sunset. And this girl had been in China most of her life, and she had never seen a sunset because it had always been too much pollution. And so she was just looking at what we all take for granted in many parts of the world, with just a simple sunset. These are my kids and my wife, about the age when we first moved to China back in 1999. They're quite a bit bigger than that. One of the first disasters besides my parents' divorce that I actually experienced overseas was Mount Pinatubo eruption. Has anybody heard about that? My wife and I actually got married, and 2 weeks later we flew to the Philippines. 2 days later, the first typhoon rolled over the base where we're at. We were crouched in this hotel room trying to get this mattress over our head, hoping the trees weren't going to fall down on top of us. About a year and a half later, this massive volcano erupted, buried the base. By the grace of God, I was off the island in Japan. My wife had just come to visit me, and we ended up not having to go through this disaster in person, but many of our friends did. It didn't kill a lot of people, but it buried and injured a whole lot of people. One of the last ones that I went through was this wildfire out in Colorado Springs, and I was actually sitting in my office watching as that rolled over the mountains there, and my house was kind of on the side of that mountain that I was living in at the time, so I thought literally we lost everything again, because that's what we thought. We'd lost everything in the volcano, but God preserved our house and our stuff, actually, although many people did lose quite a bit during that time. We also worked when we were in China a lot with orphans, and that's another crisis all over the world. I would encourage you, not just in China, but all over the world. We need people to reach out and give these babies forever homes. We need people to do foster care, but we really need forever homes, both here in the United States and around the world. And we had the privilege of doing that. We actually tried to adopt one of the girls that we had her in our house for about a year, and unfortunately we weren't able to adopt her with the system the way it was, but I just encourage you to really think about that. And all these things just point to and encourage you to, if you can memorize 1 Corinthians 13 and practice it actively in your life, you will have the greatest impact of anything that you can do. And I was actually, in the lectures that I give in China, a lot of times I'm giving medical lectures on whatever topic, but however I can, I always try to integrate this definition of love into my lectures. And I was lecturing at Tsinghua University with a bunch of high-powered students, and I usually would read this, and then I'd have my translator read it in Chinese, and the translator said, let's all read this together. And I was like, I should have thought of that. So we're going to read this together, because it really brought me to tears when I was watching those college students, and every time since then and watched these college students, and many times it was the first time they'd read the true definition of love that we get to celebrate and get to walk in every day as a Christian. That's what really separates the Christian faith from every other religion, is that concept of love, that God loves us and he wants us to share that love with other people. So why don't we try to read this in Chinese. I'm not going to be able to read with you because my Chinese is very bad, but whoever, can somebody start off, I'll read in English, and whoever can read in Chinese, we'll just read together. So say together. Love is patient.
爱是忍耐，
Love is kind.
爱是恩慈，
Love always
爱
protects.
是包容，
Love always
爱是
trusts.
信任，
Love
爱
always
是凡
hopes.
事盼望，
Love always
爱是凡
perseveres.
事忍耐，
Love
爱
never
是永不
fails.
止息，
Love
爱是
rejoices
喜
with the
欢
truth.
真理。
If you don't remember any other part of my lecture, please remember that definition. It goes on to say, as we all know, to talk about what love does not do. Let's read that together. Love does not envy.
不嫉妒，爱是不自夸，爱是不张狂，爱是不粗鲁，爱是不求自己的益处，
Love is not
爱
easily
是
angered.
不轻易发怒，爱是不计算人的过，爱是不喜欢不义的事。
I joked around with you about the easily angered part, but that's actually one of the greatest challenges I've had in my life, is learning how to control anger. And I think it's something a lot of men, especially but some women, do. And we spill a lot of anger onto our wife, our kids, or other interactions that we have. And so I encourage you to, if you have a problem with anger, that you read the Bible and look at some of those verses and really ask God to set you free from that, because he doesn't want us walking in anger. He frequently reminds us of that in many parts of the Bible, including here. So I was sitting in China, and back in 2002, I guess it was, and we heard about this little virus that was down there in Guangzhou, and all of a sudden it moved over to Hong Kong. And I remember reading about that and saying, oh, that's not going to be anything big deal. But before we knew it, it scattered around the world, the SARS virus, and spread all over. And we were in lockdown in Beijing, as well as other parts of China. It wasn't near as bad as what they are right now with the coronavirus, which was similar to the SARS virus, but it was still a pretty amazing time. I mean, you still had these guys down in Hong Kong, they were all gowned up and they're still drinking their beer, and so it was amazing some of the stuff you see. But my job as a doctor changed from seeing patients dressed like I am now to seeing patients dressed up like right there in the middle. And it was just a very difficult thing. And I told people, if I wanted to see patients dressed like this, I would have become a surgeon, not a family practice doctor. I mean, I like interacting with people and seeing their face, and they were wearing masks, I was wearing masks. We really cut down on all interaction, made it much more difficult. We were seeing patients that weren't infected. We were just worried that they might be infected. I remember talking with one of my doctor friends about this time, and Jolene comes up to me and says, Larry, you are so brave, because our other two doctors, our international doctors, left, but you're still here. You're so brave. And I said, Jolene, I'm not the one that's brave. You're the one that's brave. And she looks at me kind of strange. She said, yeah, I know. We'd already talked about this many times before. I said, I know Jesus. I know where I'm going. I don't have to worry about death, but you don't know him yet, so you're the one that's really brave. If I was you, I'd probably have been gone like those other two guys. And she's like, don't say that. But that's what I found, and that's why I want to encourage us all. In the midst of a virus like SARS, in the midst of the coronavirus that's going on right now, people are tremendously open to spiritual things. And I found that repeatedly with my patients, with my fellow staff, with my neighbors, everybody we could reach out to were very open, because most of us take death and we don't really think about dying. I had a friend of mine that came and lectured our school at university when I was in medical school, and she was 29 years old, and she went in for surgery on her lungs, and she was diagnosed with lung cancer. And they said the next day, the surgeon walks in and said, you have 9 months to live. And basically walked out of the room, didn't say anything more to her. It wasn't too nice of a doctor, I think. But and she was left with agony. But she talked about how life is like a bookshelf. One end is birth, and the other end is death. And we all take that other end, we throw it way out there, and we don't worry about the books that we put on our shelf. But when she had 9 months to live, all of a sudden she had a very short bookshelf, and she had to really think about what's really important in my life. And she found what I found, what every one of my patients on their deathbed almost will tell me, is that the only things that really matter is your relationship with God and your relationships with people. And so she greatly prioritized that, and it really transformed her life. By the way, she went by that 9-month predictive by about 20 years. So don't always listen to the doctors when they tell you something like that. But, so when people are right now in China, they're facing the coronavirus, all of a sudden death is right up there in front of them. They may know somebody that's died, or they're just reading the newspaper and they're realizing that virus could kill them. Reality is the flu virus and some other things are also out there that are as dangerous or more dangerous. But anyway, they just think about that a lot more. And so we as Christians can come in and be able to share the gospel and help them understand that perfect love drives out fear. And that's what I've experienced again and again. There's always this debate about what kind of mask do you wear, and really that's what you need to be. It's in that black one on the other side if you're really going to get much protection, to be honest with you. The face masks don't do very much. Unfortunately, they protect people around you, but they don't really protect you that much. The N90s are probably the best, other than this black one, which nobody would wear around. So what we found in China, the SARS impact, it had tremendous impact. There was great fear. We joked around about the SARS panic disorder. And we have patients that were just terrified, and yet they were smoking, they were drinking, they were living very unhealthy. And I was like, you're going to die faster from the smoking and the drinking probably than the virus. It's much more likely to take you down. As I mentioned, 2 of our physicians left. But we were able to start what they called the SARS Support Center out of the International Church and the local church there. And we were able to start delivering care packages and really reaching out to the community. Unfortunately, right now, it's so restricted they can't even do that kind of stuff. But I know God's given them other creative ways to reach out. We also started a phone counseling hotline, and it was able to have great impact. Why are people so frightened back then? Why are they frightened today? I made this list actually back in 2002, 2003 when we were there, but it applies the same thing today. There's so much uncertainty still right now with what's going on, and people don't know, are the Chinese or other governments, the Iranians, others, are they reporting everything that's going on, or is there a change in the figures or whatever? So there's a lot of uncertainty, even if they were reporting it, what's going on with that, exaggerated rumors. People have the idea that if you look somebody in the eye, you could transmit this virus, which is not going to happen with any virus that I know of. A fear of passing it on to others. That was my greatest fear actually when I was there. Was my kids were young, and we had some doctors in Beijing whose their kids had actually caught it and died. And so when you're out there doing it on your own as an adult, it's one thing, but when you're potentially exposing your kids to that death, it makes it a lot more challenging to think about. But if you read the history of missionaries across China and across the world, many of them, almost all of them, lost somebody to death while they're there. Who was the guy I was talking to about Eric Liddell? Who's the guy from Guangzhou? You're from Guangzhou, yeah. I was talking about, how many people know about Eric Liddell? Chariots of Fire, have you ever heard of that? Go Google Chariots of Fire and watch that movie. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell the full story, but Eric Liddell was a missionary in China, and his wife and kids actually at the beginning of World War II got sent home to Canada, and he was actually an Olympic person and won the gold medal in Nazi Germany just before World War II started, and he came back to China, and he elected to send his family home, but he stayed. He ended up being a prisoner of war and dying in a prisoner of war camp in China, and gave his life. Many of the early missionaries did that. Many of them lost 1, 2, or 3 children. So a loss of a child is obviously a tragic thing and something we don't wish on anybody, but sometimes we have to face those risks. And this virus that's going on today, and the virus back then, was dangerous and particularly damages healthcare provision and other things. So I'm going to skip a little bit of this. This is actually our church. And what we did was actually in the church we were putting together care packages, and the women and the men came together and sorted through all these. We had boxes of stuff that we stacked up, and we were able to deliver them to the hospitals, to the colleges around Beijing. And this was at a time where you couldn't get 2 people in the same restaurant, and we were going out there and delivering packages to people, and it really shocked them. We actually had our kids in the church make up these signs that we love you and we are praying for you, and we were able to deliver all those there. This one guy that's in that picture, the black guy, is actually a medical student from Uganda that was our #1 translator help and did a lot of really great work there as well. And all that ended up getting written up in the newspaper. And it wasn't me that did a fraction of that. It was all these other people. Because I was the doctor that was out there, they interviewed me, but it was a whole lot of other people that did a whole lot more than I did. But it was amazing to see the Chinese newspapers actually writing up what the international church, what the Christians were doing. And you're seeing some of that actually now with the coronavirus. I saw a New York Times writer was reporting about the Christians that were out handing out masks and handing out pamphlets, and he was really shocked to see them out there as well. So again, it's a really great opportunity. Some other benefits of SARS I found, and I've heard also with the coronavirus, families and couples spend a lot more time together. You know, when you're not going to work, you have a whole lot more time. And there's actually newspaper reports of couples that reconciled their marriage. They were on the verge of divorce, and they were able to get back together because they thought, man, I may be dead in 2 weeks. I don't want to go through a divorce. I want to be back with my wife or my husband. Dad spent more time with their kids. I was actually going to show a video to you. How many people have ever watched The Cats in the Cradle? Have you ever seen it? It was really popular back in the 60s, but there's actually a video version. If you go home, another thing to Google besides Chariots of Fire is Cats in the Cradle. It's a 3-minute song. I was going to play it for you, but we couldn't get it to work. And the guy sings about how his son was born, his son turned 10, and his son went off to college, and how rapidly we go through that and we lose those connections in our family. And so during the SARS virus, people spent a lot more time with their kids and their family, and it really helped a lot. Increased free time and margin led to healthier living. There's actually videos out right now that show people how you can exercise and do all these different things and stay home and do things. And it's talk about people are forced to think about death, and until you've really looked death in the face, you really don't know how to live, as we talked about earlier. People can transfer their fear of SARS into healthier living. That's what I talked about. Try to get more sleep, better diet, regular exercise. Trials and crisis produce inner strength and draw the